Thank you very much, Diana. Today's topic is, should scholarships become matches? And we're going to talk about fuel education and the lessons that we've learned and talk about the implications for the scholarship system. So the way the presentation is going to go, the first part is going to be delivered by me, and I'm going to talk about what we do at Fuel Education. Then I'm going to turn it over to Bob Hildreth, our founder, and Bob is going to talk about the broader picture, the landscape he sees. He's very involved in the thought leadership of the scholarship system and education reform, and coming back to fuel and its implications for scholarship providers. So we're going to begin with a fuel story. And here you see a beautiful photograph of one of our families. This is Bahia and her mom. They have been 4-year participants in the fuel program in Chelsea, Massachusetts. They have immigrated here from Uganda, and they came with part of their family. Education was first and foremost on their minds, but since neither of her parents understood the system in America, nor did they have any exposure and were working multiple jobs to make things work, fuel has become an invaluable tool for them to understand the landscape and how to achieve and go after what they wanted to have happen here for Bahia. And so we're going to talk about the fuel program and what it's meant to Bahia, and you'll see the end of her story as I conclude. So what is the fuel program? What are we all about? Well, we are very much focused on college access, attainable for all. Our lens is that parent engagement is a crucial and just a vital link of how students can achieve this college process. Our model is a behavioral economics model. It's one version of that. We refer to it as skin in the game. Our program is set around having active participation by the families and getting them to buy in and work towards achieving a goal. Who do we serve? We serve low-income families in the greater Boston area, so in certain sections of Boston, as well as in Chelsea and Lynn, Massachusetts. And our overall objective, what we hope, is that our families will graduate as informed consumers of higher ed so that they can help their students achieve their dreams. So what we're saying is we want them to understand not only what the landscape is and what colleges look like, but how to go about it in a cost-effective, smart way so that it's not just achieving a degree, but it's achieving a degree in a cost-effective way and a way that will meet where the student wants to be at the end of the process. So our model, we're going to talk about 4 key components of our model today. Parent engagement, our very rich college access curriculum that we offer our parents, our incentivized savings program, and then how we've accessed the scholarship system today. Here we are. Fuel is parent engagement. And you can see one of our fuel families in front of the bank where our families save, Metro Credit Union. Our parent engagement model is directed at the parents. So here we are at a different part of the cycle. I mean, so many of our colleagues that are wonderful college access programs are targeted towards schools or students. But what we're saying is we're going at it at the parent level. We offer a multi-year engagement program for families. We feel that this is something that takes time. It's not a webinar or a seminar or the kind of thing that you can put on a newsletter. It takes time to have this kind of information sink in and become practical and usable. Our parent engagement model is typically an add-on. We partner with after-school providers, schools, upward bound programs. They bring the students and they're working with the students, and then we're brought in as an additional element to bring the parents into the equation. Fuel is college access curriculum. We have some terrific staff that have spent many years developing the Fuel curriculum. It's a college access curriculum that goes over a broad variety of topics that are all meant to help the family become that informed consumer. We talk about things like, first of all, setting up savings. How do you do it? Secondly, we talk about what goes on in the high school level for achieving college dreams. Can you work with your guidance counselor? What do you do? We go into things like, what is the college system? What's the difference between community college and Harvard? What's in between? Cost, graduation rates, fields of study, just all kinds of vital financial information, both surely a lot of it's tied to the financial system and how to make that work, but there's also the broader, are you getting into the what do you want to achieve? And our end is, can we help parents become what they want to be, which is capable of supporting their students through this process? Fuel is incentivized savings. There's a whole field in the not-for-profit world called asset development. And we are in the incentivized savings that looks like a piece of asset development, but we use it a little differently because you can't solve your way out of setting up a savings account and achieve enough dollars to pay for almost any school, given who we serve. So rather, we use setting up incentivized savings as a means to attract families and to get their head in the game in a certain direction. There's all kinds of data out there that says, hey, you open up a savings account to go into, purposely for college, there is a mind shift that goes on that says we're a college-going family, even if no one has yet entered higher education. So we encourage our families to save. We help them open the bank accounts. Often families tell us it's their very first savings account. We offer savings bonuses to motivate families to meet certain objectives, and we have raffles to encourage regular savings. Fuel is scholarship access. To date, and you can see, actually this wonderful photo is two of our first scholarship recipients. To date, we have a loosely configured scholarship access with public higher education institutions in Massachusetts, as well as we've just added our first private, Boston University. When we say loosely configurations, what we're talking about is, for the most part, these scholarships are tied to if the student is accepted to the school and meets certain criteria. And so the decision-making still lies with the schools, yet they are looking at Fuel kids and Fuel families in a new light, and we have a lot of communications back and forth, and they go through the process. And quite frankly, the Fuel scholarships work better at some schools than others. We have early deadlines and to make sure they're early in the game, and some of the schools are much more proactive and receptive to this than others. We'll say, gosh, I got to give a shout out to Salem State University. We are going to have our 19th student having just entered into Salem State. So they have clearly embraced this sort of model as a way to achieve a persisting student with a family embedded in the game. Our hope is that we will continue to work on the scholarship system. It's an important part of where we'd like things to go because we think that's an important part of the end game. I'm going to give you a couple of quick stats on Fuel. We are 4 years old. We have 7 partners, and they're in the 3 cities I described. We've worked with over 500 families and 600 students. We now have a total of 164 students that have graduated from Fuel. That's from 140 families. They've saved a total of $375,000, which is a particularly large amount given the low-income population we serve. And there's an 89% persistence rate amongst our students that are currently in college. kind of exciting. We had a research study. It's ongoing, and just the first year results have come out, and we were presented at NCAN last week by Dr. Bridget Terry Long from the Harvard School of Education. And these are early results, and so there are 2 more years to go in the study. But the conclusions, and this is Dr. Long's concluding slide, was, wow, you know, this group, we have put together some important financial and academic information that has been received by the families. And they're actually using this information to do specific tasks, like go visit colleges. The students, which were a part of this study, they say, gosh, our parents we're getting more encouragement and engagement and active involvement in our academics as being part of a Fuel family. And there's suggested evidence, and that's a very important term in the research world, suggested evidence that parent involvement does influence actual quantitative achievement. And there were set examples of Fuel students doing better than non-students within and outside the school. Fuel has received recognition for our model from our peers in Massachusetts. Last year we received the Mass Nonprofit Innovation Award. From College Board we received an Innovation Award under the category of Getting In for the Northeast. And our founder, Bob Hildreth, who's going to be speaking in a few minutes, he has received numerous awards. There's a TED Talk you'll see posted on our website, a whole slew of wonderful Huffington Post blogs and op-eds and just all kinds of things at a much higher level than Fuel. It's more at the thought leadership level, but very reflective of what we're doing at Fuel. But what I'd say lastly is for us, for those of us on staff here at Fuel, our greatest reward is the family impact. Remember Bahia that I opened with and telling Bahia's story? Well, Bahia, I'm thrilled to say, is a freshman at our flagship university in Massachusetts, UMass Amherst. She's on scholarship, she's pre-med, and her family is a great example of an informed consumer. She had multiple offers, and she made an informed financial decision based on what would be an attractive financial package for her, lessening her debt, but also in a program that is pointed towards achieving her dream of becoming a pediatrician. So on my last point I'd like to make here is, what does all this mean for the scholarship system and for you as scholarship providers? And what principles of Fuel could impact what you do and what the financial aid system could embrace? And guess what? I'm turning it over to Bob Hildreth to answer those questions.
Thank you very much, Jean. First, I want to just thank Jean. You heard that she came on board a year ago, and the organization she's brought to Fuel as Fuel Education, including including the name itself, Fuel Education, comes from her. Before it was Fuel. It has been, all in all, she has raised our game, and we're just a young organization, and I just want to thank her for the staff that she has put together. I'm going to begin today with a proposal. And that proposal, we should get a lot of you thinking, is the following: that scholarships, both merit and income-based, should in whole or part convert to matched savings programs, where families save for college to become eligible for scholarships. In other words, turn scholarships into incentives. Now, why would we go to such a bother to do that? Well, it's a matter of both problems and opportunities. The problems are what we see, the scholarship trends. And I think all of you would agree about these trends. They're macro trends, but the first one is a decline in the financial impact of scholarships. Well, that's really the result of what colleges have done to scholarship providers. First, by raising tuition so fast, 500% over 10 years, And to a smaller extent, but still bothersome, through award displacement, which all of you have to contend with when at college, finding out how much scholarship you give to a certain individual reduces what they're going to give by that amount, displacing your award. Now, as a result of this decline in financial impact, or perhaps because of it, there's been a decline in market share. And by that I mean loans have eaten away at the market share of scholarships. Take, for example, Pell. Pell was once, or visions of Pell going back to the GI Bill, it was 100% of financial aid. But now, for every dollar of Pell Grant, there is $3 of loans that are given out at $120 billion last year, a total turnaround and reversal of scholarships. The third I'd like to point out is, and I'd like to hear your take on this, but I don't see much innovation in scholarships. I believe the first merit scholarship was the Rhodes Scholarship at the turn of the last century, and it was essentially, in terms of merit scholarships, finding the best students and awarding them in paying for college or graduate school. Now, if these are problems, what have been some of the impacts? Well, they point to the fact that there's a need to make scholarships more impactful. To think that the scholarship industry provides billions of dollars every year and yet sees its impact decline is worrisome, and it just strikes me as not necessary. Of course, the first thing that has to be done for financial aid is to tame tuition. We heard President Obama at the University of Buffalo last month try to jawbone colleges to reduce tuition. It's a very difficult proposition when tuition is being fed by your scholarships and by loans, which give the colleges the ability to raise tuition. There is a need to increase scholarships over debt. The whole idea of a student loan in the beginning was something very small, on the edges. There was a broad agreement that low-income people and now middle-class people need grants if they're going to college. But we convinced ourselves that students can, without any credit standing, borrow money. And once we opened this Pandora's box, it led to $1.1 trillion worth of debt. A student loan is really a grant that's been that has a terrible tail end to it, and that a student gets a loan just like a scholarship, if it's an income-based scholarship, based on being poor. The difference is a scholarship doesn't have to be repaid, but a loan does. And we should go back to a basic principle that the best way to handle low-income people is to finance the way to college is through grants and private savings. That is the most assured way. And get out of, we're stuck now in this debt mill, which we don't know how to get out of. There are two great providers, of course, of scholarships, the private sector and the government. The private sector needs to lead the way. We're seeing today in Congress, this very day, why the government is not going to lead on this issue. So the private sector, which does control a large piece of the scholarship pie, has to find ways to bring sense back into the financial aid system. Now, what is the role of match savings in reform? First, what is match savings? everyone, I'm sure, has an easy definition, and you're right. It's nothing more than a program that challenges families to save by offering incentives. So those incentives can be a broad set of incentives. They can be a one-to-one match, so cash can provide an incentive to a family. If a family saves $25 a month, they can be matched $25 a month up to a certain limit. Scholarships can be rejiggered to become the incentive. So right now, scholarships are free money. They ask nothing of the family. Talk about merit scholarships for a second. Let's say it's in the realm of a history scholarship, and students are expected to write the very best essay they can in history, and the winner or the winners get scholarships. This is, a fine program. No need to change any of it. Those are requirements. But a history scholarship is part of a larger scholarship system. And this larger scholarship system is saying in bright lights, bright flashing lights, that anyone who takes that history scholarship also has to be a knowledgeable consumer of financial aid. And the best way to make a person a knowledgeable consumer is get them involved, skin in the game, get them savings. So that your history scholarship, by asking folks to also save to be eligible along with the essay, it can be incorporated, and it is a great gift to the families that you give to. A third thing about match savings is it expands the responsibility. We all have heard, and we all know through common sense, the importance of family in a student's path to college. Any place in any suburban town can show you multiple examples of families acting in a positive way for their students' college ascent. We need to get families at all levels, both low income, middle class, and the higher end, involved in their students' education. And if the family is responsible for saving, and it can be mom and dad, the student itself, uncles, whoever in the family has aspiration for that family, they can help save for their child to go to college. Do we have to invent some big, huge savings platform for all of this to occur? No. All across the country, we have a 529. It's too complicated, I admit, but that 529 program existing in all 50 states can accommodate and is ready right now to take those savings. So what would a match savings program add to scholarships? Three very important things: resources, parent engagement, and early awareness. Let's look at each one of them. Resources are needed because from what we're hearing in Washington, there is, and what we're seeing, for instance, for the first time in 7 years, the use of Pell Grants went down. The total amount of Pell Grants also went down. Stafford loans at $120 billion is becoming more and more of an issue in the budget talks of Washington. After a while, we can't depend on these two programs, Pell and Stafford, to go up like they have. So we need private sector resources. We need family savings to fill the gap. If properly incentivized, incented, and organized, they could have a major impact. Already, of course, they're contributing billions of dollars. But it's a reverse pyramid. That is, most of the money is coming from the savings of the upper class, a good deal less, unfortunately, from the middle class, and very little from the low-income groups. We have to find a program where all of the families can save. And that means that scholarships need to offer incentives. It's for either merit or Pell. To give you an idea of Pell, the top award is $5,600 last year. I think it actually is dropping to $5,000 this year, but let's use $5,000. A certain portion of that $5,000 could be in the form of an incentive, so that you could have what I would call Pell Extra, so that everybody can get the maximum gift that's available right now, the maximum grant, but there would be a proviso which said if people raise $2,500 of their own through 529 savings, there would be an extra amount in Pell for them. Whatever the government could afford, meaningful, but given the government's problems, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one match. It would be wonderful if it was a two-to-one match, but that's just not going to happen. Parent engagement. Now, this is the thing which we were surprised and we found out, that savings is really a vehicle to mindfulness. That is to think about what we're trying to get away from. The college award letter, where colleges have the temerity to list loans under financial awards, financial aid. They can do that because the Stafford loan has a subsidized interest rate. But there's nothing that has a loan that should be listed right next to a grant, the Pell Grant, as financial aid. So this lack of transparency goes up against low-income families that have no one that has gone to college before. No one who has experienced the result of these letters, the result of loans. So this has really become a game. Financial aid is becoming a game of high hunting, of extreme danger, of a lifetime of debt. So this is not a parlor game. This is a real need to get information to parents in a timely manner. One of the things I'm proudest at Fuel, as we are pivoting, as our students go from a focus on prestige and on the top name private schools to a focus on value in public schools. We have 20 kids right now at Salem State, which is one of the most reasonably priced, high-value colleges in Massachusetts and I think in the United States. Savings provides an entry point to all of this knowledge. We have the parents saving every month, and we have the parents in Fuel Education coming to meetings every month. Through the savings, they're getting skin in the game, and this gives them an incentive to learn what we're teaching them. Early awareness. Everybody in the scholarship world and in the college access world is talking about early awareness. Many studies from Harvard Ed School on down show, I said on down because I went to Harvard, show the importance of early awareness. Now, there's controversy in everything. Across the country, Children's Savings Accounts, or CSA, is being opened up. CFED, if you know it, a fantastic Washington organization, has trumpeted these CSAs for decades. Perhaps one of the most important, one of the most interesting programs is in San Francisco, where at kindergarten, everybody in the city gets a CSA account. We look at it a little bit differently. We look at it in terms of starting early awareness as freshmen in college, freshmen in high school. That's much earlier than most people have it on senior year. And we find that families and kids are most attentive to what we say about the college process. It still gives them time to save. And so we find that ninth grade, perhaps middle school, there's nothing exact here, but it gives us a really a good audience. Now, two key questions that you might ask to finish my part in this webinar. First, can those with lower incomes save for college? Kind of sounds like an oxymoron. I mean, the reason why poor people can't save is they're poor. And the second very political question is, can tuition be controlled? Because that's necessary for a really good, both are necessary to answer for a really good match savings program. Well, our families over about, well, a little more than 3 years have saved $375,000. They're all low income. If any of you are from Massachusetts or know of our state, and I say the cities of Boston, Chelsea, and Lynn, you know that these are three low-income cities. I would also raise a second point, and that is, you know, immigrants now compose over half of the low-income people in the United States. And these immigrants are sending back to their countries remittances back to China and India and Mexico and the rest of Latin America, $120 billion a year. I mentioned Chelsea and Lynn and Boston. Those towns with all the poor are on record, according to the Federal Reserve, as sending scores of millions of dollars back to their home countries. Wouldn't it be great if through incentives we could induce some immigrants to save a little for the children they see right in front of them here in the United States? Having said all of this, I know there will be a need for a safety net in the match savings program. I know there will be some families that won't save, and yet they will have a child with much promise to go to college. And so we will have to work on the safety net to accommodate these children. Can tuition be controlled? My last point. Well, I mentioned, you've heard the President's jawboning. The director of the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, said that the most important task of the next 4 years of his being in charge of the Department of Education will be to control tuition, to bring tuition down. And we also know, given what we're hearing from Washington, both the Harkin Committee against private schools, and the President and the Speaker, and the fact that the government appears to be running out of money, although they still have the printing press, so everything goes slow, that there will be a withdrawal of government support at these increasingly high levels of college tuition. So that I think, unfortunately, through perhaps a very tough revolution occurring in higher education, that tuitions will be brought down. In fact, there might be a period when they're brought down abruptly. So after we pass through that disruption and we see colleges merge and close, we see fewer places, unfortunately, for low-income students and the chaos. I would love to avoid that. But it means we have to start addressing these problems right away instead of having them overwhelm us. We will reach a new world of very low tuition. Yes, as you've heard, it's going to be filled with online classes and MOOCs in order to improve productivity. And it will also be one, I believe, when everyone in America can afford college. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Bob and Jean. We don't have any questions so far. So folks, if you've got questions about Fuel and their program, go ahead and type those into the webinar console there in the question function. If you are attending the NSPA conference, you can talk to Jean in person. She will be giving a quick 5-minute rundown of their program during the Gallery of Good Practices on, let's see, Wednesday, October 16th. And you'll have the opportunity to chat with her face-to-face there. All right, we've got our first question. Tammy asks, generally, what are the income levels of the families who participate in Fuel?
Okay. Everyone in our program is in free and reduced lunch. If you know free and reduced lunch, it's something which is not a great indication. So I don't think we can stop there. So we get income levels from all of our families, and I would just tell you that 61% of our families are below $50,000. And and then that $50,000 is like a break. Hardly anyone is above it.
All right, thanks,
We
Bob.
also, though, just to clarify too, we have many families that are at 20,000, 10,000 to 20,000, living in projects, single moms, and yet those families have been able to save and meet their goals.
And the irony of this is that so many of our families that qualify for very strong financial aid packages because they're zero EFC families, zero expected family contributions, because they don't know that they qualify for this, because the education is so difficult for them to access and that information, it's almost as if it doesn't exist. And that's a big piece of what we do at Fuel, is educating families about their financial status and what their financial status permits them to access in the higher ed system just based on their financial picture.
Great, thank you both. We've got another question in from Maria. Is there a minimum families need to save? And do you offer budgeting and credit workshops?
Well,
Shall I do it?
okay, go ahead.
We have two basic models at Fuel. And depending on what community we're serving and what our contract is with the partners, remember I talked about the fact that we go through and we are tied to schools or student provider organizations. And so we enter into an arrangement with, depending on who our partner is. And we have two basic models. One is for our more resource-rich situations, and others is where there's more of a financial constraint. So, for example, in Chelsea, we have very broad and deep support from the business community. And we're able to offer a one-to-one match, and it's a very substantial situation. Most of our work in Boston, we're providing and growing in larger numbers, but we don't have that deep financial support, so that the money is, and the savings is much smaller. It might be as low as a $300 match budget bonus tied to $600 in savings versus something that's maybe 5 times that in other communities. Interestingly, our results are early. We're seeing much the same behavioral outcomes in both. Certainly, it's wonderful for the families to have accumulated more dollars than less, but in terms of our behavior outcomes of learning and in filling out the FAFSA and becoming an informed consumer, we're seeing much the same patterns even when the financial situation and the stakes aren't as great.
Thank you, Jean. And we've got another related question to that about if people lose intent in saving after a while?
Oh, yes. Do they? Yes. It's called savings fatigue. It's been noted in the literature and in practice for years. Because we have an incentive model, we have staged it so that people start out, as Jean was talking about, with just a savings model, which we provide incentives for. But if they do well in savings and in attending the 1 month, each month savings circles, then we provide a raffle, and their name goes into a raffle, and they can earn $500 scholarships, as a result of their good performance. So you have to keep the rewards in front of the families.
Great, thank you, Bob. Let's see here. Can you talk a little bit about how a scholarship program might maintain its standards if it becomes a savings match?
Yes, sure. There is no contradiction. It's additive. So if a scholarship, some of our scholarships are classics. They've existed for decades, going back to the Rhodes Scholarship. And quite rightly, they're very proud of those standards. And I would be proud too. We would be merely layering on a standard of savings, where, depending on where they are and so forth, we would also offer instruction and knowledge of college to them. But it would be additive to whatever a scholarship is asking of a child. Additive both in terms of it's an extra obligation, but additive in terms of who is performing. So it's not just going to be the student writing that essay. Now it's going to be the family, including the student, saving that money.
Great, thanks, Bob. And Jean, can you talk a little bit about how Fuel recruits its families?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you so much. Because, yes, we're tied to our partnership organizations, but in reality, people ask, is there a requirement? How do you recruit, and what happens? Well, we do go and do presentations. Call it the Boys and Girls Club in Roxbury and Dorchester, or the Chelsea Public Schools. We held informational meetings, but what's most fascinating about what we do is that the real criteria is just ambition. And by ambition, we mean, gosh, you get into Fuel, you've got to save, and you've got to come to the meetings, because our financial incentives are tied to those behavioral metrics that they need to meet. And we send out monthly statements that kind of look like bank statements, but they're bank statements combined with behavior. And so a family, the student, the parent, has to have sheer ambition. And one of the fun things, and I would love all you scholarship providers out there to come to a savings circle. We've had some scholarship folks come visit us, and one of the things they find most intriguing is just how motivated and ambitious these families are, and that there's this whole purposeful thing that happens. If you're going to succeed at Fuel, you got to be ambitious.
Great, thanks, Jean.
I would add to, may I add to Jean?
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Oh, may I add to that?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Oh, okay. At Fuel, one of the things we've discovered is that we really have to look at poverty in a totally different way and give poor people a lot more credit than they're given. It's amazing in conversations I have how quick a discussion on poverty immediately sinks to drug dealers and mothers who are not attending to their children. Well, we have a totally different picture. We have a picture of, I think most of the impoverished in the United States do have ambition. That it's a knowledge issue, an incentive issue, and that they do especially care about what happens to their kids. And instead of always attending or thinking to how can we get the drug dealer off the street as emblematic of poverty, why don't we get into the heavy lifting of figuring out how to provide incentives to the vast greater amount of the poor that exist here in the United States and really help them.
Great, thank you, Bob. And Tammy sort of followed up on this question we were just sort of talking about how you recruit students, and Jean, you mentioned this a little bit, giving presentations at Boys and Girls Club, but can you go a little bit more in depth about how you introduced students and families to your program and how you market that in the communities you work in?
So remembering that we're just in our 4th year, and so we're building a whole program here and a delivery system. So the way we've achieved the scale that we've achieved thus far has been indirectly through partnerships. In Chelsea, we have a citywide model, but in most of our other situations, we've come in through a major institution. I'm going to keep with the Boys and Girls Club example. So what happens at the Boys and Girls Club? The different club directors each year talk to the students, send notice to the parents that Fuel is going to be doing a presentation. There's a partnership with Fuel. We think it's a wonderful college access program and an important piece, and we'd like you to come to this presentation. And there's a little more to it. One of the incentives that we offer in our program are meals. And that becomes a very attractive thing. As we talked about how motivated our families are, it's amazing how many families work multiple jobs. So accessing schools, going to different seminars at the schools and PTA meetings are very challenging. They might have a day job and then an evening job. We have timed our meetings and even our solicitations such that we think there could be maximum family participation. We also make it very accessible in multiple languages. So we might have some of our meetings in the morning for folks that work night shift. We might have them, the bulk are after work in early evenings and include dinner. We have our meetings are in English, Spanish, Arabic, and I believe Somalian at the moment. So we have this process. We've contracted ahead of time with Boys and Girls Club, continuing on that example, about how the program is going to look, what the savings goal is going to be, what the matches and incentives are going to be, how long the curriculum is going to run, etc. So we do our approach through our partners. What's interesting is many of our partners tell us that they joined Fuel and partnered with us because they wanted to have college access and wanted to see good, successful outcomes for their students and their participants. But they found that they, too, were eager for parent engagement, and they could never find a way to get the parents involved in X, Y, and Z. So when we set up our meetings, our partners are often telling us they do all their parent engagement on whatever time the Fuel meetings are going. So the whole thing is tied towards making it work for the families, right from that very first recruiting meeting.
Great, Jane. Thank you for sort of following up with that. Can you tell us what the average savings per student or family is, and maybe just about the general success of the savings program?
To date, the average savings has been $1,200 a family, which is and some of our programs will continue with that sort of ambitious number. But as we work towards building a model at Fuel that can replicate into a broader context, As I mentioned earlier, we've been experimenting, and just this fall we're coming out with a lower match that would have a family saving a total of $600. It has been very well received thus far. And in fact, for some families, it's an additional incentive because the larger dollar figure was a little too steep. And remember that we're using the savings as an engagement tool. Whether it's $1,200 or $600, that is not going to solve the financial aid gap for most of our students for a course of a 4-year or 2-year college program. But that savings as an engagement tool, as a skin in the game, and providing respect and all kinds of wonderful attributes that come with that are important. So if Tammy were to say, I want to have a program like this, and is there an absolute dollar figure, we would say no, but we would point to the different models depending on what her program looks like, who she's serving, and what resources can be brought to bear.
Great, thank you, Jean. And sort of a follow-up to that, can you talk a little bit about if a student is meeting standards but the parents aren't saving? Does that, and if so, how affect the child?
Well, we have two standards. First, or two goals. First is a savings goal, and second is parent attendance at our college access meetings, which we call savings circles. Now, the student may help the parents save. The student may come to these meetings. It's encouraged if they want to, especially by the meal, the good meal. But we do not have a goal for the students. We have the comfort of our experience and of the literature, which shows that engaged parents improve the performance of children. If you have a situation where you have you could easily have scholarships that combine with match savings and have goals for students. Just obviously all of the merit scholarships have goals for students. And if you got into a situation where the students seem to be performing, very well, but the parents haven't met the savings goal, you obviously would have to have a chance for the scholarship committee to make its decisions. Every scholarship committee is going to anyway. But imagine a system which is countrywide, where there is an expectation within financial aid of parent savings. Well, then it will become less and less common that the students who often save for themselves, by the way, at these amounts that Jean was talking about, students with a summer job, just one summer job, can probably reach these goals themselves. But you'll get into a situation where that will become less and less of a problem.
So as Bob has pointed out, we actually do have some students that are saving for themselves out of their summer jobs.
Great, thank you both. That looks like it wraps up questions for now. If you have a question that hasn't been answered yet, go ahead and type those in. And in the meantime, Jean and Bob, thank you so much for sharing about this very innovative and interesting program. And again, for our audience today on the line, Jean will be at the NSPA conference in a few weeks, October 16th, presenting during the Gallery of Good Practices reception. And, excuse me, you can see her in person and talk to her face-to-face and learn a little bit more about the program. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And Jean and Bob, thank you for presenting, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks very much.